Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that
because
question?
the question is, the question is,
radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen.
That was Joe Biden and Donald Trump in just one of their showdowns of the 2020 presidential debates. This week, they are preparing to face off again in their first rematch of the 2024 cycle. CNN's Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, of course, will moderate, and the network has already announced steps to try and limit some of the chaos you heard in that other clip, including no live audience and also being able to mute the candidates' mics. While Trump is still on the campaign trail, Biden is in intense debate prep at Camp David, and there are reports that his personal lawyer, Bob Bauer, is retaking the role of Trump in those mock debates. Bauer is a longtime campaign lawyer for the Democratic Party, prepping Biden in 2020 and previously serving as Barack Obama's White House counsel. Now he's the author of a new book, The Unraveling: Reflections on Politics Without Ethics and Democracy in Crisis. Bob Bauer, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
I have lots of questions about your book, but I'm going to start with the obvious question, if I can. Are you right now working with President Biden for debate prep, and will you, as you did back in 2020, be playing Donald Trump again?
I'm afraid I can't speak to any debate preparations for 2024. I can talk about what I write about in the book, debates in 2020, but not for this year.
Can you say that you are involved in the debate prep, or not even that?
I can't even speak to that.
Okay. Understood.
I don't know whether you call it appropriate code of silence or how you characterize it, but it's not a topic that I can speak about. And I hope you appreciate that.
I certainly do. That was my attempt, and I'll move on. Because as you said, you did do the debate prep for President Biden. You've portrayed Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. How do you go about doing something like that? What is the goal when you're preparing to take on the candidate?
The goal is to recreate as much as possible the experience as you anticipated of facing that particular opponent in a debate. And it requires immersion in material, audio material, visual material, written material, so that you can recreate as much, capture as much of the style of argument, the tone of argument, the substance of argument as you possibly can for the candidate that you're trying to help.
How challenging is that when it's someone who is loose with facts, shall we say?
In every case, candidates, if you will, have your way. You've referred to Donald Trump's looseness with fact. You fundamentally try to reproduce that as well. You try to help your candidate recognize that the candidate that you're dealing with will say, at any given point, what it is that he chooses to say, whatever support there may be, and if there's no support for it. That absolutely is part of the experience of trying to, or the attempt to try to create an experience that is going to approximate as much as possible the actual debate conditions.
And some of that is also, and you mentioned this in the book too, trying to get under the candidate's skin, trying to elicit a response. I wonder how difficult that is, though, when the candidate is also the president of the United States, and you're meant to try and, I guess, openly insult him in some way.
The job is the same, whether it's insult or not insult, whether it's a somewhat more subtle way of trying to induce a candidate to commit a gaffe or to stumble on a point. The job is the same, which is, if that's in fact what you expect the strategy on the opposing side to be, that's a strategy you have to pursue for purposes of the debate prep. You just have to do it. Otherwise, you're not serving the candidate that you're trying to help prepare for the debate.
This is the first debate that's happening on Thursday. I think the next one's not until September. In your mind, as someone that has watched his politics and has been part of the political process for a long time, what's at stake here? How important is this debate?
As I write in the book, these candidate debates across the board are really an important part of the process. It takes the candidates, out of campaign commercials and out of controlled settings and puts them before the voters in what is essentially an unscripted to the extent that they can't control the questions, they can't control the moment when the opposing candidate challenged them to speak to this or that issue. And so in that sense, it's an extremely important moment in a campaign. I don't think of any debate as lacking significance for the campaign. Sometimes the significance is overstated, but for the most part across the board, I think it's such a unique opportunity for the voters to evaluate the candidates. There's really nothing like debates in the campaign situation.
You've done a lot of work sort of studying what is the best format and making recommendations about how a debate should unfold. But this one was set up by CNN, not the Commission on Presidential Debates. And in fact, I think you are starting to question the relevancy of that commission now. Tell me why you think we ended up in this space where CNN is going to be in charge of this debate, at least.
That is a topic that I wrote about in the book. I wrote about, again, this was published before these debates came about in the format that they're going to be held today. Some years ago, the University of Pennsylvania Annenberg School convened Democrats and Republicans who had some experience with debates and were observers of the political scene and participants in it to discuss what a contemporary updated debate format would be. And we made very specific recommendations to change the debates away from some of the standard steps that had been taken by the Presidential Commission on Presidential Debate, the standard structure that they had adopted. They didn't do that, really. There really hasn't been any updating. And what we have now, I think, is very consistent with much of what the Annenberg Group recommended, and I think it's better for all concerned. No audience in a studio, much more on the model of the Kennedy-Nixon debates. And there's never a need for all the hoopla. The theater is stripped out, and we have the two candidates just having a debate. And I think that is a good place to have landed.
Well, one of the candidates enjoys theater, though, and I think that's part of the reason that CNN put this muting of microphones in place so that when the person is not talking, they're not talking. And I wonder whether you think that will serve voters better to have, those parameters of civility, I guess, in this debate.
Well, you put your finger on something really important. It actually is for the voters. Yeah. It's not for ticket holders or people who want to circulate at parties beforehand. There used to be these beer tents that were held on the campuses where the debates were held, or where people could socialize. This is really for the voters. It's for everybody who tunes in or attempts to see the debate in whatever format they choose, social media or otherwise. And so doing what is possible to permit an honest-to-goodness debate to take place, which includes that step that you referred to, which is muting the microphone of the candidate who's not speaking, which is another way of reducing the role of theatrics, definitely serves the voters.
Just to go back to some of the other, yes, you talk about the debate in your book, and obviously that's the focus this week, but you talk about a lot of your concerns about what is happening with the democratic system in the United States right now, and particularly the erosion of accepted norms, and we've seen many examples of that over the past couple of years. But you also seem to think that is not just because of Donald Trump and will not end if Donald Trump loses the election. So talk to me about what is your biggest concern there and how you fight against that.
In my view, candidates who, if you will, like Donald Trump, are norm-busting candidates, and that's obviously to the taste of many of his supporters, those candidates don't invent the weakness of the norms that they're exploiting or that they're casting to the side. There is something going on, some erosion in the politics of the country that makes it possible for them to succeed by disregarding those norms. In fact, challenging them frontally. It's not that they're honoring the norms and then quietly disregarding them behind our backs. They're frontally challenging those norms. They're saying they don't matter. In fact, that complying with the norms, they might argue, is the work of chumps, fools, people who don't know what it takes to win a campaign, don't know what it takes to govern. And in my book, I argue that the people who are in government and politics, sometimes in highly visible positions, but in responsible positions, even if not visible, have in their hands the survival of those norms, the robustness of those norms, and the choices they make every day that determine whether those norms or other democratic institutions and practices are healthy and do survive. Those decisions that they make every day are ethical decisions. And a politics without ethics is a politics that will ultimately slip away from the norms, and it becomes an anti-democratic, small d, anti-democratic politics, not the kind of politics we want to practice in a democratic society.
I'll just end on this. Would you be concerned that if Joe Biden wins, that the results will be contested by Donald Trump again?
I can only tell you in the public space, Donald Trump has said repeatedly over the course of his career that he couldn't possibly lose an election unless the election was rigged. And we know that he's been talking ever since he challenged the 2020 election with such a spectacular lack of success, losing 60 plus cases in the court. Ever since then, he's been talking about a stolen election. So I think people can draw their own conclusions about how he would respond to a loss.
Okay, Bob Bauer, you might be doing speech prep, but we can't talk about it. So I'll let you get back to whatever you're up to. Thank you so much for making the time for us, sir.
Thank you very much.
One of the moments from that Joe Biden-Donald Trump traditional debate about 4 years ago, probably the most memorable moment. This Thursday, though, those two candidates will again debate, this time hosted by CNN with some different rules. It'll be simulcast here on CBC News Network as well. And that's where we will start with our American Roundtable this week. With us today, Josh Wingrove, White House reporter with Bloomberg News, and Anita Kumar, senior managing editor at Politico. Hello to you both. This is a big week. It's kind of exciting, I think, the first debate on Thursday. Josh, talk to me about the stakes here for Joe Biden in terms of what he needs to do and what he might be looking to highlight.
The expectation setting is all over the map right now, Rosie. These conservatives, including Donald Trump, have spent the last year or more on and off repeatedly questioning the president's acuity, which of course sets the bar pretty low. And in the past week or so, they're saying, yeah, Joe Biden's a good debater. He's always been good at this stuff. So they're, really going back and forth. We didn't know that this debate would even happen. It was unclear whether Biden wanted it. Of course, questions of age are hanging over it for him, and that is underscoring the stakes. Now, this has been the case before, chiefly in the State of the Union, where Biden gave a pretty well-regarded speech and sort of quelled those. So for the Biden campaign, they're seeing it as an opportunity, particularly as you see outlets, including conservative outlets and figures sort of pushing clips or, deceptively edited clips that sort of highlight Biden's age, 81 years old. They think essentially that is lowering the bar, and the debate is an opportunity for him to, prove to voters that he's up for another 4 years. For Trump, he wants to make this squarely a referendum on Biden. Polls are showing that people think more positively of the Trump presidency now than they did when he actually was president. So there's sort of a rose-colored glasses in retrospect thing going on. So both of them are going to try to make it about the other one in this. And I should say they're also cutting off mics is an interesting rule on this one. We'll see how that goes. I'm not sure that necessarily will help Biden as much as they might think it is.
As someone that moderates and has moderated debates even, I don't know if it works either. Of course, you don't want the other guy heckling when one guy's talking, but I'm not sure how you get around some of that. And that does add to the dynamic and the energy of the debate, too. So, Anita, tell me what you're going to be watching for from the former president or the current president in terms of, where the conversation goes.
Well, I think the first thing you guys hit on, which is it going to be chaotic, or are we actually going to hear policy issues and be able to hear the debate? I think a couple things. I'm looking at some policy issues specifically that the president is vulnerable on, that we are seeing from polls. So the two of the biggest issues are immigration and inflation. And of course, inflation has cooled a bit. We saw it a little bit, more drastic in the beginning part of the term, but there's still people that are out there saying that the costs are too high for groceries and housing and all that sort of stuff. So we'll see how he responds to that. Immigration has been huge the last few weeks. President Biden with some executive actions trying to kind of respond to criticism that he's not doing enough, and his executive actions have done a little bit of both, right? Like sort of limit the number of people that could come in, but also offer a legal path, legal status to some others. So you'll expect President Biden to say, or President Trump to say, look, he's trying to, it's all politics. He's playing it on both sides. So those are the two big issues I think that a lot of voters want to know about and that I'll be looking for.
Okay, Josh, I speak a little bit later with Bob Bauer, Joe Biden's personal lawyer. I did the interview just this morning, and he stood in as Donald Trump in the 2020 debate prep. He won't say that he's involved. He won't say that he's playing Donald Trump around him, but he does seem to be one of a series of pretty important people that are prepping Biden for Thursday.
Yeah, well, let me do it for him. He is involved. He's at Camp David right now, where Biden is doing his debate prep, and I'm told he is in fact reprising his role playing Trump
very good.
In the sort of two-podium case. So, Mr. Bauer, I guess feel free to call me Bob. If you want to disavow it. Broadly speaking, Biden has sort of like gone up there Thursday. He's sort of huddled together, and they're trying to sort of hash it out with his senior aides. He's got a pretty tight group. A lot of these people have been there since the beginning. This has sort of helped Biden control, the party in a way, right? Because there were there's been sort of like simmering questions for a year about whether Joe Biden will run again or should step down. But Biden people have always insisted this is all the plan. He was always going to run again. And they're basically trying to stay calm and carry on. I've been looking back to 2012 when Obama kind of put in a bit of a stinker in his first debate with Romney. And it was up to Biden in his debate with Paul Ryan to really sort of energize the Democratic base. There are elements of that here where a strong performance from Biden might not move the polls. And I should say sources are sort of downplaying expectations that there'll be sort of a seismic shift in polls. Biden has been doing better in polls recently, I should say, as well. But, calm nerves among the people that you need to door knock, organize, volunteer, donate money, all that. So Biden, I think, in some ways is doing what he did in 2012, of course, trying to, win the debate, convince independent voters, but also try to calm nerves and, rally his own people to keep, the push.
So let's talk about his own people, Anita, because the Democratic National Convention takes place in Chicago. It's mid-August. There's going to be protests. There's still going to be, we'll see how Thursday unfolds, but there might still be questions about his age. There might still be questions about whether he should have bowed out. How important is that convention for, providing momentum for the president, reassuring people that he is the right guy for the job?
Yeah, I think you hit on it exactly. I mean, I think two of the things that we're really going to be looking for is what does that speech look like, right? Yeah. We always have those age questions. We're also going to be looking, massive protests are expected, as you mentioned, and I think we're going to look at how the Democrats and the president are sort of reacting to that. But overall, it's a big picture thing here. I mean, we know what's going to happen in this convention, right? Conventions are predictable. What we're looking at is exactly what Josh has talked about, which is, do they come out of this convention with Democrats saying they want to go out and vote? That sounds like a silly, small thing, but it's actually huge because we see a lot of Democrats saying, yeah, I don't want Donald Trump, but are they going to actually get out, donate some money, knock on some doors, and most importantly, vote and get their friends out to vote? And that's still an open question. We have seen this enthusiasm sort of wane in the Democratic Party because of Biden and Vice President Harris. And so this is going to be really a key moment for them to kind of get people excited.
So what about on the Republican side, Josh? That convention is July 15th. It's in Milwaukee. He should unveil a VP, I would imagine, there. What are the expectations for that event?
We fully expect him to have his VP in place by then. The week before is when we expect sentencing. So this is going to be just a tumultuous couple of weeks. Biden is hosting a NATO summit that week before as well. So you're going to have a real split screen effect that the Biden people will no doubt lean into. The buzz on the VP is that he's getting closer. Trump has kind of offered hints in the last couple of days that he's made a decision but hasn't told the person whether that's true or not. Make your own decision. But it looks like it's down to sort of a handful of people. But really, this is the Trump show, and the convention will be the Trump show. Yeah. And for them in particular right now, they're bullish because they think they have a chance to even expand their map, add potential swing states that were thought to be safe blue states, namely Minnesota and Virginia. Democrats sort of aren't as convinced that those states are actually in play. So Trump right now is on offense. He's completely emboldened. He's raising more money than he was. He's at least claims to have started narrowing the gap with the Democrats on that, and the trials really have been fuel in terms of fundraising in particular for him. So the RNC will just be the Trump show.
I only have about 30 seconds, Anita, but it does sound like you're not going to have much time off this summer. Like it's going to be busy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a million things to look forward to. Dates. I'm really focused on July 11th, which is the date that Donald Trump is going to be sentenced. Yeah. Want to know whether he's going to get jail time or probation and how that impacts the race. And of course, whether he can push that off after the election if he appeals. So I'll be really focused on that right before the Republican debate.
Okay, thank you both. Canada's Josh Wingrove and Anita Kumar. We'll see you again in the fall. Hope you get, go Oilers. Hope you get a little bit of a break before busy time for you guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.